So the Montreal Canadiens are in a very similar position with where they are at the end of, by the end of the season. I mean, I don't really see them making the playoffs unless they have some kind of miracle run in the regular season, which is pretty unlikely, but we'll see. Now, there are some promising signs when it comes to Patrick Laine. This guy's got 8 goals in 10 games, but they are going to be sellers at the deadline. And, we know that every team is desperate for a center. Like, a centerman in this trade deadline is going to be more valuable than a defenseman, bar none. Like, that's not even an opinion. The teams are desperate, but the second in line, as I always say, is going to be a defenseman, 100%. And Nick Kypreos of the Sportsnet 590 has said today that David Savard obviously is going to be on the block. Now, David Savard as a player is actually a player I've advocated for the Leafs getting because they've been desperate for right-hand defense for a while. When they got him, I was actually pretty pleasantly surprised. But yes, they are obviously going to have to move past him. David Savard gets paid about $3.5 million. I'll put the contract up on the screen for you guys. That's not that bad. Like that's dealable, right? Like you can manage that. And obviously he is going to be an unrestricted free agent in 2025. Now, David Savard is not an offensive producer really at all, although it's very weird. He actually had like an 11-goal season, 36-point season with Columbus. I actually looked into his history and I was like, wow, he had one season where he actually did a lot better than you would expect a player of his caliber. But he's certainly not going to be any type of offensive producer. But again, if one of these two teams that I'm going to say that should acquire him gets him, they can mask his offensive, incapabilities. Let's put it that way. David Savard in Montreal has been a pretty consistent defenseman. He hasn't been that bad for them. Now, this year, he has taken a step back with the average time on ice that he's playing. He's playing in the high 18s. But in his first couple of years, he was playing like 20, 21, 22 minutes average time on ice. So, somebody's going to have to pony up to get him. Now, two destinations that I have pointed to before, I think that Vancouver or Edmonton. I would probably say Edmonton would be like top on that list. For a couple of reasons. Number one, I think that Edmonton is a good position for him because their top offensive producers produce in the playoffs. Like McDavid and Draisaitl get better in the NHL playoffs. Like it happens every year where these guys are just unbelievable and their point per game goes up. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's very rare that players almost get better and more clutch in the playoffs, but it's going to happen. So you don't really have to get an offensive defenseman that helps you too much there. But the Edmonton Oilers, since obviously this offseason and and what happened with St. Louis and Edmonton, as we all know, they've needed an offensive a blue liner in general, and David Savard probably fits that bill. And it's a plus that he shoots right. And then, as I said, the second would be Vancouver. Vancouver also needs a blue liner, and they do, and that does make sense, right? Now, I mean, I don't know if that would solve all their problems there, but I really do think that David Savard is pretty good. Now, if you are an Edmonton or a Vancouver fan, I want to know, what would you be okay with your team giving up for him? What would be too much? What do you think is realistic? Now, you have to remember he's going into UFA, so you're going to lose him. I always tell, fans, always expect a player to walk in UFA unless he's signed. Players like that always leave for unrestricted free agency. He's literally just there for one playoff run, essentially. Stuff like that does kind of obviously kill you as a fan because you're going to give up assets that you're never going to see again. Most teams aren't going to win in the playoffs. Although if I'm Edmonton, man, you never know, man. That team was that close to winning the Stanley Cup last year. So you never know. With the right blue liner, maybe if their goalie makes a couple more saves, I mean, they could win. They almost won it last year. Now, is David Savard a game-breaking type blue liner that you can rely on in all situations? No. I wouldn't really necessarily call him a two-way forward either. because I think that two-way forwards need to offer you more offense than he does. David Savard he just does not consistently offer you nearly enough offense to be called that. But he is a top 4 defensive defenseman, and I'm telling you, he's got a little bit of size. He's 6'1", and this is a player that can make a difference in a very specific situation in the playoffs. And again, year after year after year, we see teams with big, rangy blue lines. They are more likely to have an impact on the game. Now, I know there's a bunch of different factors like goaltending, how your stars perform, what kind of coaches, do they outcoach each other or something like that, but still. Now, I will say this as a warning. When it comes to Vancouver, I wouldn't really want them to give up that many assets. Like, I always judge how many assets a team should give up by essentially what kind of play, what kind of chance does this team to have to win a cup? Like, I actually do want Edmonton to give up a decent amount of assets simply because, or get the player essentially. Do what you have to get the players that you need, because that's how close they were to winning the cup, right? Like that's how close they were to winning a cup. And also Montreal just got Carrier as well, so they have that spot taken up, and they probably, he's going to be a UFA. He probably wants way too much money, David Savard, that is. I mean, think about it this way. Look at some of these defense contracts are just ridiculous. Joel Edmondson, last free agency, I think he almost got like $4 million. I mean, the guy's a bottom pair D. A defenseman that's right-hand shot that plays that many minutes, David Savard is going to get paid. And I'm telling you, he's going to get paid a lot more than you think, in my opinion. Look at some of these terrible contracts. Anyways, I just wanted to touch on that NHL trade rumor. If you guys could like, comment, and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it, and make sure to have a great day. Bye, guys.